Have you ever regretted the words that slipped out in just 1 second of losing control? A harsh message, an angry glare, a sentence that shattered a relationship you spent years building, all because you couldn't hold yourself back in the moment. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Anger is a form of self-punishment. You suffer, while others remain unaffected." And worse than anger itself, is not realizing that it's the one controlling you. In today's video, I won't tell you to suppress your emotions or count to 10 until it goes away. Instead, you'll learn how to uncover the root of your anger. You'll explore Stoic strategies to stay grounded when emotions erupt. And more importantly, you'll learn how to transform anger into inner strength, rather than letting it become a weapon that destroys you from within. This video is not for those who want to become emotionless. It's for you, the one who's been angry, then filled with regret. The one who knows anger solves nothing, yet still lets it take over. And most of all, it's for you, the one who wants to remain composed under pressure, who wants to stay calm when everything around you falls apart. If you're ready to stop being a victim of your own emotions, then stay. We're about to begin a journey toward mastering yourself, one step, one thought, one breath at a time. 1. Anger is not the enemy, loss of control is. Most people assume that anger is a weakness, a flaw to suppress, hide, or feel ashamed of. From a young age, we're taught to calm down, keep it together, or worse, pretend it doesn't bother you. But Stoic philosophy offers a radically different view. Anger itself is not the problem. It is simply a signal, a messenger. The real danger is what comes after, the uncontrolled reaction. That moment when emotion takes the wheel and reason disappears. You see, the Stoics never said you shouldn't feel. What they taught was far more powerful. Feel fully, but do not let the feeling control your actions. Emotions arise, they always will. But how you respond is where your true power lies. Picture this. A mid-level employee in a high-stress meeting gets publicly blamed by his boss for a mistake actually caused by his team. The room goes quiet. Everyone expects a defense, maybe even an outburst. But instead, he remains still. He listens completely, without interruption, without the twitch of defensiveness. Later, without saying a word about the blame, he revisits the issue with quiet clarity, resolving the real cause with his team, then delivering a solution that speaks louder than any rebuttal ever could. He didn't suppress his anger. He just chose not to hand it the microphone. That's what inner mastery looks like, not the absence of feeling, but the presence of control. When you stop viewing anger as a verdict, "I'm bad because I'm angry," and start seeing it as a signal, something feels violated, let me examine that, you move from shame to sovereignty. You no longer fight your emotions, nor do you let them fight for you. And from here, a deeper shift begins. You stop blaming the outside world for your emotional state, and start owning the power to choose your next move. Because the true transformation doesn't happen when anger disappears, it happens when you can stand in the fire and still think clearly. And clarity only comes when you stop reacting on impulse, which leads us to the second principle. 2. Reaction is instinct, response is class. Anger is one of the oldest defense mechanisms of the human mind. When something feels unfair, threatening, or insulting, our biology pushes us to react, fast, loud, and with force. It's automatic. Evolution made it that way to protect us. But here's the truth, just because a reaction is natural doesn't mean it's useful. The real difference between a reactive mind and a resilient one is just 3 seconds, the pause between impulse and intention. In those 3 seconds, a person either becomes a slave to emotion, or steps into mastery. Think of a man who's just been harshly criticized during a team meeting. His heart races. Blood rushes to his face. He wants to fire back, defend himself, prove his worth. That's instinct. But then, he pauses. He breathes. He asks himself, what's really being attacked, my idea, or my ego? Instead of reacting, he chooses to respond, calmly, clearly, and without malice. That shift from instinct to awareness changes the whole room. Not only does he gain respect, more importantly, he keeps his own. Too often, we blame others for our outbursts. They made me mad, she disrespected me, he triggered me. But that belief is an escape hatch, and a dangerous one. Because the moment you give someone else responsibility for your emotional reaction, you also hand them control over your peace. Anger might be involuntary, but reaction is not. Reaction is a choice, even when it feels automatic. And with every emotional trigger you choose not to pull, you strengthen the muscle of self-command. So the next time someone criticizes you, try this. Instead of asking, how dare they say that, ask yourself, what truth, or fear, did their words touch in me? There's a quiet kind of strength in using criticism not as a weapon to fight, but as a mirror to grow. One person gets offended and retaliates. Another gets curious and refines themselves. Which one do you want to be? In the end, it's not about suppressing anger, it's about elevating your response. Because anyone can react. But only the disciplined, only the conscious, can respond with intention. And when you respond with intention, you regain the most powerful thing of all, your sovereignty. That inner sovereignty becomes even more unshakable once you realize this. Stress doesn't cause your anger, your interpretation does. 3. Stress doesn't create anger, it's the way you think that does. Stress doesn't create anger, your interpretation of stress does. This is one of the hardest truths to accept, but also one of the most liberating. The Stoics were crystal clear on this point. It is not events that disturb us, but our judgment about them. You don't get angry because something happened. You get angry because of what you told yourself it meant. Two people can experience the exact same moment and feel completely different. Imagine standing in line at a coffee shop. A stranger suddenly turns and shouts at you for no clear reason. One person instantly feels disrespected, insulted, and prepares to lash out. Another pauses and sees a person in pain, stressed, exhausted, maybe barely holding on. One experience. Two responses. The difference? Not the event, but the lens. When you believe that your feelings are always telling the truth, you become their servant. But emotions are not facts. They are reactions, often conditioned by years of fear, pride, ego, and insecurity. The moment you treat emotion as the full story, you close the door on clarity. But when you question your own narrative, something powerful happens. The emotion begins to loosen its grip. The Stoics called this epike, suspension of judgment. It means stopping yourself in the moment and asking, is this really what I think it is? Or is it just what I've told myself it means? Take this into daily life. You're in traffic. Someone cuts you off. Your body tightens, breath shortens, the mind screams, what a jerk. But what if that driver is rushing to a hospital? What if it had nothing to do with you? Just that possibility changes everything. You don't need the full story. You just need to remember that your version might not be the only version. When you change the story, you change the feeling. And when you change the feeling, you change your ability to choose, not from reactivity, but from awareness. This is the moment self-mastery begins, not when you force yourself to be calm, but when you realize that the storm never started outside, it started in your mind. And if it starts there, then it can end there too. But to interrupt that storm, you'll need a skill even more powerful than reasoning, the ability to pause. The space between impulse and action, between thought and speech, is where real strength is forged. 4. The art of delaying response. That space, the one between the stimulus and your reaction, is where your power lives. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Don't rush to react. Look deeper into the thing before passing judgment." He understood something we so often forget. It's not the first thought or feeling that defines you, it's what you do with it. And in that small pause, even just 10 seconds, you give wisdom a chance to speak before your ego does. Consider this. Someone sends you a message that feels like a slap in the face. It's passive-aggressive, condescending, maybe even cruel. You feel the fire rising. Your fingers are already drafting a reply, sharp, fast, punishing. But then, you stop. You wait. Just 10 seconds. Maybe you reread the message. Maybe you breathe. And in that brief delay, a different voice enters, not the wounded ego, but the calm observer. You still feel the sting, but you no longer need to sting back. That one decision, to wait, might be the single thread that keeps a relationship from unraveling. It might save you from saying something that echoes in regret for months. And more than that, it reminds you, silence is not weakness. It is space where intelligence and strength can enter. The world moves fast, but self-mastery moves in stillness. Every time you delay your reaction, even by a few seconds, you reclaim a piece of yourself from the chaos. You're saying to the emotion, you may rise, but you don't get to rule. This isn't about being passive. It's about being precise. Anyone can blurt. Anyone can lash out. But it takes discipline to pause, to reflect, to respond on your terms. And ironically, that pause, the one that feels so small, so quiet, often speaks the loudest. Because it's in that silence that your true character is revealed. And the more you practice that pause, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, you don't just delay your anger, you begin to see through it. You realize that most of what ignites you isn't worth your peace. And that's where something deeper awakens, the understanding that not all wounds are meant to be defended, some are meant to be observed. 5. What really makes you angry? Not other people, but your ego. Most people think they get angry because of what someone else said or did. But Epictetus cuts straight to the truth. It's not others who insult you, it's your expectations and ego that feel offended. Anger rarely comes from reality. It comes from a belief that reality should have looked different, and that belief is almost always rooted in the fragile weight of the self. Take something as simple as being stood up or left waiting. Your partner arrives 30 minutes late. No call. No explanation. The clock ticks. Your jaw tightens. Anger rises, not because of the time lost, but because of what it meant to you. They don't value me. I'm not a priority. They're taking me for granted. That meaning didn't come from the clock. It came from the ego, from the part of you that needed to feel significant in their eyes. And when that significance felt threatened, the anger ignited. But here's where most people go wrong. They confuse the feeling of hurt with truth. They assume that if they feel disrespected, then disrespect must be happening. But the mind is quick to create a story, and slower to question it. Maybe your partner got caught in a family emergency. Maybe they were thoughtless, but not malicious. Or maybe, your peace was never meant to hang on someone else's behavior in the first place. This is the core of Stoic clarity. If your peace depends on others treating you a certain way, then your peace is not yours, it's leased. And that's the real source of volatility. You're not angry because someone failed you. You're angry because their action clashed with the image your ego built, an image that says, I must be respected, I deserve attention, or I should be treated a certain way. Now ask yourself, what happens if you no longer need that treatment to feel whole? What if being late doesn't touch your worth, because your worth was never up for negotiation. Suddenly, the entire structure of the emotion collapses, not because you denied it, but because you saw through it. And this isn't about letting people walk over you. It's about knowing that your dignity doesn't need to shout. It sits quietly, untouched by external noise. When you drop the need for constant recognition, you drop the hooks that others can use to control your emotional state. Letting go of ego is not weakness, it's the beginning of true resilience. Because the less you rely on others to affirm who you are, the more unshakable your inner world becomes. And when your inner world is no longer dictated by how others behave, you stop reacting, and you start choosing. And choice, not control, is where freedom begins. Especially when that freedom includes what, and who, you allow into your space. 6. Master your breath, master your emotions. Control doesn't begin in the mind, it begins in the breath. Your breath is the invisible thread between your emotional storm and your rational self. When fear spikes, when anger builds, when anxiety presses against your chest, the first thing that changes isn't your thoughts. It's your breathing. It becomes shallow, rushed, erratic. And if you don't interrupt that rhythm, your thoughts will follow its panic. But here's the insight most people miss. Just as emotions shape breath, breath can reshape emotions. This is where true self-regulation begins, not with the intellect, but with the nervous system. The Stoics may not have had modern neuroscience, but they understood the principle: calm the body, and the mind will follow. Picture a young entrepreneur who's about to deliver the biggest pitch of his career. Minutes before the presentation, the client cancels. No warning. No explanation. Rage, frustration, and fear of failure start to boil. But instead of reacting, instead of texting an angry message or complaining to his team, he walks to a quiet corner, closes his eyes, and begins the 4-7-8 breathing cycle. Inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 7, exhale for 8. One cycle. Then another. Then a third. 3 minutes pass. When he opens his eyes, the anger is still there, but it no longer commands him. He now responds from clarity, not chaos. This is not magic. It's biology. Your breath speaks directly to the vagus nerve, the control center for your parasympathetic nervous system. When you breathe slowly and deeply, you signal safety to your body. And safety is what makes composure possible. Calm is not a personality trait, it's a nervous system state. One that can be trained. You don't have to be born patient to be centered under pressure. You just need to create the right conditions inside your body. Breath is the switch. And the best part? It's always available to you. No matter where you are, no matter what's happening, your breath is right there. Waiting. So the next time you feel hijacked by anger, frustration, or panic, don't try to suppress it. Don't fight it with logic. Just return to your breath. Inhale slowly. Hold. Exhale even slower. Repeat. And with each cycle, feel the grip of emotion soften. You're not pushing it away, you're reclaiming the space around it. And from that space, your next decision will no longer be ruled by reactivity. It will come from presence. From this presence, you begin to observe emotion without collapsing into it. You step out of the wave, and finally, you start to see it clearly. 7. Don't fight your anger, observe it. Most of us make the same mistake. When anger shows up, our first instinct is resistance. We want it gone. We try to suppress it, hide it, or get rid of it as quickly as possible. But like fire, the more fuel you pour, in this case, denial and force, the more it burns. Anger is not an enemy to be defeated. It's a phenomenon to be witnessed, like an uninvited guest. It arrives, it stays for a while, and eventually, it leaves. Imagine emotions as waves. You have a choice, either get pulled under and drown, or learn to ride the wave with presence. The first person reacts, panics, and screams, "I don't want to be angry." The second calmly acknowledges, this is anger. I feel it, but I am not it. The difference lies in conscious observation. Picture this. You're in the kitchen after a long exhausting day, and someone in your family makes a careless comment. Your heart starts racing. Your hands tense. Your mind begins a courtroom monologue. How could they say that to me? But instead of reacting, you pause. You observe what's happening inside. You name it, anger. You don't suppress it, nor do you become it. You simply see that it's there. And then, you let it be. In that moment of not resisting the emotion, you step into your highest power, the power to choose. When you become the observer of your anger, you're no longer its victim. You stand in a place of agency, where you can speak, stay silent, walk away or lean in, all from clarity, not compulsion. The difference between someone drowning in anger and someone riding through it isn't about what they feel, but how they relate to what they feel. One treats anger as an absolute truth. The other sees it as a passing cloud, drifting by, dissolving on its own. And the paradox is this: once you stop fearing anger, once you stop fighting it, you'll notice something profound. It no longer holds the power you once believed it had. Your presence has drained its energy. And from that quiet space, you begin to see more clearly what truly needs healing, not the outside world, but the world within. 8. Anger is a signal, not your identity. Anger is not who you are. It's simply a warning bell, sounding off whenever an inner need is unmet, a boundary is crossed, or a core value feels threatened. But instead of listening to that signal, most people try to shout over it. They react. They blame. they attempt to control others. And in doing so, anger stops being a message and turns into a weapon. The next time you feel yourself getting angry, pause and ask, what need in me is not being met right now? Maybe it's the need for respect. Maybe it's the need to be heard. Maybe it's the need to feel safe, seen, or understood. A team member might be angry at their boss, not because of the workload, but because they feel unrecognized. A father might yell at his child, not because of what the child did, but because deep down, he feels like he's failing and doesn't know how to say it. Anger, when examined carefully, always carries a message. It's a flashing red light saying, look here, something inside needs your attention. But if you don't slow down to see it, you'll speed through emotional danger zones, and eventually crash. This is your moment to shift. Instead of letting anger ruin a conversation, a meeting, or a relationship, let it lead you inward. Ask yourself, what am I afraid of? What am I needing that I haven't expressed? What part of me am I trying to protect? These questions won't erase the anger, but they'll make you conscious enough not to act blindly through it. The person who can witness anger as a signal doesn't just avoid hurting others, they begin to access deeper truths within themselves that are normally left in the dark. Every outburst is a doorway, and that doorway always leads inward. The question is, do you have the courage to walk through it? 9. Stoic Thinking. Everything is neutral, until you assign it meaning. Nothing is inherently offensive, upsetting, or unfair, until you assign it that meaning. This is one of the core principles of Stoic thought: events are neutral. Your reaction gives them power. Marcus Aurelius wrote, if something does not touch your mind, then it cannot harm you. This isn't a denial of pain, it's a powerful reminder. It's not the event itself that hurts you, but the interpretation you attach to it. People may speak harshly. Situations may spiral beyond your expectations. But unless you meet them with defensiveness, judgment, or ego, all that remains is data. Imagine someone in a heated argument. The other person says, "You're completely useless." To one individual, this is deeply offensive. To another, it's just a sentence, a reflection of the speaker's inner wounds, not a measure of personal worth. Same words, different reaction. Because the meaning assigned was different. And that brings us to a crucial truth: you cannot control the world. You cannot make people behave flawlessly. You cannot ensure life is always fair. You cannot prevent every disappointment. But what you can control is the meaning you attach to what happens. And that's where your real power begins. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" try asking, "If this were a test, what lesson is it offering me?" When you shift your perspective, the event may remain unchanged, but your inner position transforms. And that inner position determines whether you live as a victim, or as someone who commands their own narrative. 10. The final question. Do you want to be right, or do you want to be at peace? Most anger doesn't come from real pain. It comes from the need to win, to be right, to prove a point. The ego demands to be correct, and sees any disagreement as a threat. But have you ever noticed that every time you win an argument, you often lose something more important? Picture two close people in a heated exchange. One presents flawless logic, sharp counterpoints, undeniable facts, and wins the argument. The other person goes quiet. The conversation ends. But afterward, the connection feels strained. The trust weakens. The warmth fades. So what was really won? A short-term debate? Or was something deeper, closeness, understanding, peace, just lost? The ego loves to be right. But you need peace more than you need to win. And those two things rarely live in the same room. Being calm doesn't mean giving up your truth. It means refusing to let your emotions destroy how that truth is delivered. A wise person doesn't need to shout to be heard. They know that if what they're saying is true, it will stand on its own strength, with or without aggression. And if it needs anger to survive, then maybe it's not as strong as it seemed. The reward for being right in a fight is the fleeting satisfaction of superiority. But the reward for staying calm is freedom. You're no longer controlled by others. You're no longer shackled to emotional impulsivity. You don't need to win, because you're not playing that game anymore. The wise don't chase being right, they align with what is right within themselves. And that is something no one can take away from you. Calm isn't something you wait for when life settles down. It's something you actively build, in the very moment everything around you tries to pull you apart. Anger doesn't make you weak, but letting it control you is what truly strips away your strength. And here's the powerful truth: you don't need anyone's permission to reclaim that power. You just need to begin with one choice, one breath, one moment of observation instead of reaction. If this video stirred something inside you, don't let it fade like a passing moment of inspiration. Turn it into a daily practice. Calm is a skill. And like any skill, it must be trained. Backhand index pointing right. Drop a comment below. I choose to respond, not react. A simple action, but a powerful commitment to yourself. And if you're ready to keep walking this path, mastering emotional clarity, inner resilience, and unshakable presence, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because in the next videos, we'll go even deeper into mastering the mind, healing the ego, and embodying a calm that no one can take from you. See you in the next one. And remember, you don't need to raise your voice to be strong. You only need to stay clear enough to not play the wrong game.